And you're live.
All right, great, thank you. Good evening, welcome to the Finance Board meeting for Wednesday, January 15th, 2025. I will call the meeting to order at 5:02 PM. The first item on our agenda tonight is to start our budget meetings with the various town departments for fiscal year '26. And the first department we have in today is the town clerk. Thank you for joining us tonight, Beth.
Well, thanks.
Obviously, you're familiar with what we do here. We just look for you to give us an update on the department and then to just run through your request and identify any information that you think is important for us to be aware of.
Okay. Okay, so for this year, the clerk's office runs on a kind of a four-year cycle as far as expenses for elections and poll workers. So if you'll notice, the cost this year dropped dramatically for both the poll worker expense and the election expense. And then I guess the only other thing, and then the standard for us for salary is at 2%, which I noted on my copy. And then my office expenses haven't changed much. The town education expenses didn't change much. And the only thing I was hoping to ask for again is an increase in the pay for the poll workers. It is still the $11 an hour, which is significantly low. I agree, Jim. I know.
That's not right.
Agreed. I would hope that at some point this board would find enough money to pay the minimum wage. There are a number of poll workers who volunteer their time, who aren't even paid at this point, or who use it towards senior write-off, so.
Have your volunteers taken, I know we only get a couple elections, on the big year last year, you got enough volunteers?
Yes, we have some,
That's good.
we have a really great staff at this point.
Good.
We have people who stay full day. I have people who switch off and do either morning or afternoon. And then we also have a group that come in for the end-of-day tally when everybody is tired and beaten, wants to go home. So they are fresh eyes. So it works out really well. And most of the people who come in for the end-of-night tally are actually volunteers.
How many paid hours do you have per year roughly for the poll workers?
Well, last year there were 5 elections. So
Yeah,
it's all
yeah.
dependent on the election.
Is there a 4-year average?
I don't have.
Yeah, okay.
Is that something you could put together just so we could just take a look at it? Like what the hours were for the last couple of years? Like, do you have that information?
Sure.
And you can always, feel free to forward it to Rebecca or myself directly, just so that we have something that we can work with.
Okay. Let me do that. Because I have legal requirements as to how many people I have to have in the room. So basically, it would be just those number of people for each election.
Right.
Okay.
All right, that sounds good.
The town elections, you're gonna have early voting?
Early voting, vote by mail is mandatory unless the Board of Selectmen choose to vote not to have it. Early in-person is optional, and the
Okay.
Board of Selectmen have to vote to have it. So it's the opposite, but I have to have a meeting with the registrars. The registrars will recommend a schedule,
Well,
and
the
then
only
I'll take
reason I
that.
asked is during the last year, some of that was just too long, I mean.
But that's, for a state election, it's legally mandated as to how
So
many
I
hours they have to
understand
have.
the mandate,
Okay.
that doesn't make it right, especially for a town this size.
Even for the large communities, the turnout was extremely low for
Yeah.
certain elections. The presidential had a good turnout, but
Okay.
the primaries did not.
I noticed in your write-up, you kind of go through and you talk about some of the activity for the year in terms of record requests, vital record, public record. Can you just talk about if you're seeing a trend in that increasing significantly over the years, or is it, because obviously that is also a part of, you know, the capacity that your office is able to take on.
Okay, so the dog licenses stay pretty much level from year to year, and it's significantly fewer dogs licensed in Groveland that are actually owned in Groveland. So I would like to work on a program that would get more people to actually license their dogs every year. But we don't have an animal control person at this point, so we don't. Our letters that we send out to people, when a person takes their dog to the vet and they receive their rabies shot, the town is notified. So we send letters out at that point to say, you have a new dog, and remind them that they need to register, and those go unanswered. So
How many
Many
licenses now?
it's $10 for,
No, I mean, how many dog licenses?
last year we did 672.
Okay.
So it stays in and around that 700 figure,
Is there a rough estimate for how many dogs we think are in Groveland?
about 1,400.
Okay, so over 2 tons?
So we're missing about half of them.
But people also don't notify you when their dogs pass. So-
Wow.
And
Sure,
I will say the vets aren't as good about getting back to us when I send them a list and say, do you still have these dogs? Are they still your patients? Are they still active?
sure,
So we don't always get a response on those. So some people may have lost their dogs and we just don't know it.
sure.
So
And some people probably go out of town for veterinary services too, right?
if they move out of town, I can cross-reference it with the street list, which we do. But if they're still in town and their dog,
Sure.
let's go. So for the vital records, they're pretty, they have increased ever since the mandate for the license changed. So people need to come in and get copies of the marriage certificates or birth certificates so they can go to the registry and get their, the new licenses. So those numbers went up at that point and have they've stayed consistent. Public records requests have increased ridiculously, and for all departments in the building. They come through me, but then I have to ask the other departments to respond, and then I send out the response. So it's from Realtor requests to election requests, it's to tax information requests. It's gone a little haywire. The business certificates are pretty much average. We had one year when they were extremely high when we put in the new software system, so we contacted all the old businesses that had not been contacted, and a lot of them renewed, so that was a year that the numbers were good, but now it's pretty consistent annually. Marriage intentions are low this year. We usually run more in around the 20, 25, but it's still not a significant number.
You make note of the 40B, is that the one that's off of Salem Street, the 189 and 90 units?
That's correct. So just the increased number of the
Well, there'll
population.
be at least
increase will-
300 more people.
Right, with registered voters, with activity that goes along with voting, with mailing out, applications to vote, with just correspondence with people moving in and changing the license information. All that has to be, we have to confirm that when somebody goes to the registry and they make any changes, whether it's their birth date and they have to get a new license, or they move, or they change party, all those people, we have to notify. It's a duplicative effort, but it's required.
And you also mentioned you're working to develop like a welcome packet for new residents, which I think is a great idea.
We have tried that for the last 4 years, but Julie, my assistant, who's awesome, put out an email to all the clerks in and around and asked what you have for a packet, ideas, and then we just sent out a notice to all the departments. If we put together a packet, do you have information that you'd like to have included in it? So once we get all that back, we'll put something together and send it around for, I guess, approval, or at least make sure everybody's in agreement that the information that we have is correct, and it'll be great for the new residents when they move in, so that they know about the website, they know about the code red, they know about the Board of Health and the trash, and they know about the Council on Aging and everything that they offer, and when their tax bills come out, and that they can pay them online, so just everything will work well, and they'll
Yeah,
register to vote.
As someone who sees a lot of like the online posting of who does this and where do you go for this, and like
True.
having a centralized point, like even if it's just a tab on the website, new residents, or, you know, even if it's a packet you pick up. I'm constantly like, it's here, go talk to this person. So I think that's helpful.
And I will say, in working with the clerk's office, we realized that the functionality of our current website is not really ideal for getting information out the way that we'd like, and we've heard a lot of feedback from residents about not being able to find information, and it's also very timely for staff to upload information and get things, documents available. So we are looking at a new website provider that will help us specifically with website information, project information, packets, minutes, agendas, that will make it a much more streamlined process and will also make it easier for residents to find things. And a resident tab is exactly what we would like to incorporate. So you move into town, you understand trash information, you understand contact information, and things like that will all be readily available. So to your point, we are recognizing that we're struggling with that, with our current design, and we're working towards a more efficient design, both on the front end and on the back end.
The biggest question this time of year is your tax bill. And explaining how that works. Does anyone have any questions for Beth? Bill, I know you just got here. I don't know if you have any questions for Beth on her budget or what you've read through.
I did read through that. Oh, here it is. What was discussed on the raising that $11 per hour, which
I think we just brought it up, and I had asked just to get some information about the number of people that it would involve, just so we can, you know, kind of take a better look at that.
yeah, I mean, the first thing I thought of was, my God, the minimum wage is how much?
15.
We ought to at least pay that.
It should be at least minimum wage.
For God's sakes, I mean, really, that should be a no-brainer. The 23, I'm not sure where that figure came from. It must be the overall
Well,
aggregate of everybody in Massachusetts, because I can't believe $23.
I went to the website.
It was a newspaper article that had
No.
quoted that as the average.
Oh, I saw, yeah, I threw that away. That's what they say. But, yeah, $11 an hour. That's crazy.
And Melissa, I just want to confirm, you are also looking for the average number of hours.
Yeah, I'm just trying to
Per
figure out
year.
like how to populate, you know, if we were to try to, you know, incorporate that request in some manner, it maybe it's, you know, a multi-year approach to get it up to that, if we can't do it all at once, but just some idea.
Okay, so I'll give you the average hour and then the number of volunteer hours.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's, I imagine that will fluctuate too, from an off year like we're going to have this year to next year, which is somewhat busy, to the following year, which is kind of an off year, to the 2028, which is going to be a big year.
Yeah, they had kind of asked for an average of 4 years, so I'll give you an average over the 4 years, and that'll kind of take care of the fluctuations.
Can we see the 4 years? You know, boom, 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 boom.
Well, it's based on an election. I give you the
Yeah, yeah.
number per election, and then I'll give you the number of elections per year, unless you have a special. Like this year, we had 5, so that was unusual.
Yeah. The other thing I had highlighted was areas of increased activity with the completion and occupancy of the 40B complex. You're talking about Sewell Street? You think that's going to be occupied in the next fiscal year? I mean, I've seen them pour, and I've seen them put some roads, but I would think they're a long way from an occupancy, aren't they?
That's what was reported to us by the applicant, so he is moving quickly. Building 1 and 2 are pretty much moving, so he is looking for occupancy next fiscal year for at least that building. What happens during the construction schedule, if that's delayed, if there's other hurdles that he has to cross, but what he reported to the town planner, well, to myself and to my office, was that it would be next fiscal year.
And this was recently, currently? Or recently you reported that to you, or originally?
Sorry, what was it?
He reported that to you currently,
I would say,
or recently, I meant,
when
or
was our last
Yeah, the-
meeting? So I'd say December
or December so we,
of 2024, so last year.
So last
Just
month.
last month.
okay.
And I know that the building commissioner has been making inspections to the site as well, and they've been moving pretty steadily even with the colder weather.
Yeah, I've seen the activity, and I noticed, some concrete foundations and things like that, but I was amazed that they thought they'd go that fast.
It's a very aggressive schedule. Whether or not they can meet it, to me unseen, but they definitely have set an aggressive schedule.
Everybody's gonna have goals in life, you know?
And whether they achieve it for fiscal '26 or '27, it's just more that will impact the
It's
clerk's
in the
office.
pipeline regardless.
Oh, yeah, I know, I've been well aware of this and how it's gonna impact the infrastructure of the town for a long time. Too bad we didn't get a handle on it. No, that was the only questions I had. Thank you, very, very comprehensive.
Yep.
Thanks.
All right, great. Thank you, Beth.
All right, thank you. I'm out of the hot seat. Thank you very much for your time tonight.
You're welcome. Thank you for coming in.
Let me turn this off.
The next department on our agenda is the Board of Assessors. She's not in here quite yet. Do we want to, she might be coming in, but do we want to jump ahead to the approval of the minutes while we wait? Oh, wait a minute. Oh, here she is.
Told me I had to turn it.
Actually, thank you so much for coming in. We've been through this a couple of times now, but just, if you can just give everyone a little bit of background about your department, what you do, and then walk us through your budget request, so that we're aware of anything that you need to point out, or it seems pretty straightforward to me, so.
Okay, yep. So I am the assessing manager. This year, we spent a lot of time on what we call a certification year. We had to reevaluate every property in town this year, and it happens every 5 years. The Department of Revenue does a deep dive into our database, our records. They make sure we have all our maps updated and are current. They dive into our excise and our real estate abatements and exemptions. They make sure our cyclical inspections are running on schedule. They dive into our growth, our permits, our sales analysis, and they make sure all of our loc IDs are current, properly updated, and correct for all the emergency services in town. And then that all gets submitted and it has to be approved, and that all happened. It was a lot of work, and it was the first year for me going through this process in Groveland, so it was busy, but it worked out good. So far, since the tax bills went out, we only have one abatement application submitted, which is, that's good feedback. And it's it was a tear down a few months ago, so it's kind of an easy situation. It's not really an incorrect assessment, it's more of something that's not there anymore, so we're working on that. My budget, again, is pretty straightforward. My salary with the 2%. The assessor stipends are still at 0, and we have expenses are the same. The reval maintenance, which is New England Municipal Consultants, they are the same. We did see a small increase of $473 in our software and licensing with Patriot, who is now the name Catalyst, so they switched names, but we still call them Patriot. And the personal property appraisals, which we have to pay for now, and that actually paid off this year. We were able to discover a lot of new growth in personal property utilities. So I do have the numbers of the growth we captured, I think. Yeah, we captured another, over $2 million in personal property. And we did capture new growth of $13,691,910. That's value this year. And that was a tax levy growth of $185,388. So we had a decent year with growth. It was kind of unexpected. We weren't sure with the cost of construction and all that stuff. Sometimes growth seems to slow down a bit, but we had a decent year with growth, so we were happy about that. Everything else has been pretty business as usual. We actually just got our first excise commitment, and that'll be going out pretty soon, so that's starting some revenue for the new upcoming year, which is good. I think that's about it this year.
I see you added 7,000 to the evaluation maintenance. Why was that? It's a big difference.
To reevaluate, no, it's the same. 4,700 it was last year and it's this year.
I'm sorry, I looked at the wrong column.
That's okay.
So let's say that construction gets done on the 40B. What's gonna be? So how does that impact you? Because that's a big property.
So that will, as far as assessment purposes, we have New England Municipal Consultants will.
They'll come in.
Yes, it's done in phases, so as things happen, say the foundation goes in and they close out the permit for the foundation, we'll go out and inspect that and we'll grab that growth for just that portion of the project, and it'll continue that. So every year on January 1st, that's the assessment date. So whatever is done, whatever was completed January 1 of this year, we will be picking up as growth for the upcoming fiscal year. And then it's just permit processes. We go out and inspect as permits close, and we'll add that growth for the following year.
Who pays for those consultants?
We do. That's what you see, the revalue maintenance, that's that contractor.
That's a huge property. It's got a big footprint.
Yeah, it's, the contract is to inspect all properties and permits. And like I said, it's not gonna be done in one inspection.
All right.
It's in phases, so it's kind of broken down and, the way we capture it.
Is that? You good, Jim?
Yep.
So I had just one question about the personal property appraisals. I thought that was a one-time thing a couple of years ago, and then it didn't get done that year, so it carried forward another year, but it was going to be not an annual thing.
So it is, yeah, no, it is an annual thing. What was new was that we were required to have them appraised. We used to use a different system, almost like a Kelly Blue Book type system to appraise these big utility companies. And then they found that that wasn't the most efficient way to capture growth for cities and towns. So they started making it, part of what's required in order for everybody to be on the same page. So we have to use professional appraisal companies in order to have them done.
Okay.
And that's we have to do it every year. We have to have it come up with a new assessed value every year, just as we do for real estate. So it's gonna be something that is gonna stay, unless they change it again, but I'm guessing it's gonna stay. I mean, I think it's worth the, paying the money to have the professionals do it, because like I said, we did get a lot of growth from those inspections.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
There's a board, right? Assessors board.
There is, yes, and
And, how many are there?
currently there are 3.
That
Next year,
makes-
we are only going to have 1. I know 2.
That makes quota?
Yes, quorum, yep, so we had 2 for quite a while, and we did get a 3rd member last year. But I know that 2 of our board members are leaving, so we're going to have 2
Oh.
open seats again.
So you won't have a board until you get up to 3.
Correct. It's not easy. It's not easy.
Enough of that, because you need some experience
Yes.
in that. And you have to be certified at some point.
And I think a lot of people, that's a misunderstanding with a lot of people who like to join boards and volunteer their time, and I think that's wonderful, but I think a lot of people don't realize that you have to take a course and you have to get certified in order to be on a board of assessors. And a lot of people just don't want to go through that process.
You don't get paid for the jobs.
Right, that too. But I think mostly, a lot of people are maybe retired, or they have more time than somebody who's younger and is more familiar with computers and taking online exams and that stuff. So I think it shies some people away from, wanting to be on that board, unfortunately.
And then what happens if you don't have a full board?
I don't know.
Can't
I'm assuming the Department of Revenue
Can't
won't be
re-
happy.
re-
Yeah, I mean,
Approve
if we
reassessments.
don't, and I'm not sure, I can make some phone calls and find out.
Curious.
Yeah,
If
I've
you
never,
have
I've always kept fingers crossed, and it's always been okay, but I think that if we don't get a full board, or even 2 out of the 3, then they might have representatives that can help. I'm not sure, but I can find out the answer to that for you.
Like I said, I'm just curious what
Yeah.
happens when you don't.
Yep.
Well, if a homeowner wants to say, my house is over-assessed, usually the board has to approve that, right?
So in a case like that, and we're in that process right now, the month of January is when, if you feel like your assessment is incorrect, you can come into my office, fill out an application for an abatement. And what we would do in that case is we would send our consultant out to do an inspection.
I got that part.
So, and then he will write up a report, and then we bring that to the board and we'll discuss, and then they make a
But if
determination.
there's no board,
there's
That-
no one
right.
to-
then
There's no one to vote, right.
The homeowner is up the creek.
Correct, but we do rely heavily on the opinion of the professional consultant
Okay.
that we use, so,
I know, but you don't have.
but he doesn't have the
approval
authority to, correct,
Yeah.
yes.
Out of curiosity, and in case somebody's watching, what's the rough time commitment to get that certification? Is there a course that,
So it would be on their own accord. It's
self-study?
It's something that you can stop, save, and go back to. It's not something that you would have to sit at continuously
Yep.
for the entire course. And I also believe that it's a learn as you go, and you can go back and look. Once you get to the exams, you can go back and refresh and,
Right.
flip-flop back and forth in order to be certified.
Okay.
Could you realistically do it on a weekend? One weekend?
I would, I would say, yeah, but a lot of, it's, if you don't have any assessing background or knowledge, a lot of the terminology is probably gonna be unfamiliar to you, so you might have to take some time to be
Yeah.
kind of looking into things as you go. And there are a lot of different aspects. You're doing excise, you're doing real estate, personal property, the administrative part of it, so you kind of have to, they touch on everything that goes on, and it is a lot of information to kind of absorb at one time, but it's not, you do learn as you go,
Yeah.
even after you pass.
Sure.
You're not gonna know everything after the course, but you'll have enough to be able to, even ask the right questions.
Right, I would think to initially get started, it would be largely utilizing your judgment and your, certain obligations, but you've got the benefit also of you and the, consultants that we've hired
Yes,
and what have
yeah,
you. And so
correct, yep.
Is there a cost? Do they cost?
No, there's no cost.
No cost?
No cost.
And, not to hold you to, what's the typical time frame? 10 hours, 16 hours?
I honestly took it so long ago, I can't give you an answer. I would say maybe 6 hours or so,
That's not too bad.
if you sat there and did the whole entire thing, yeah.
So you said that, to Jim's point, if somebody didn't agree with the assessment, then the consultant would come out and do whatever. Now, is that the same consultant that gave the original appraisal?
It is, but see, what happens is, when someone doesn't agree with their assessment, the first thing we would do is cross-check our database with what they say they have in the home. Sometimes we might make a clerical error, or there could be an error saying that they have X amount of square footage finished in their basement, but they actually have half of that. So that would be something that you're just going in for one purpose, and, sometimes we can find the error just by cross-checking the data. Sometimes it's a matter of opinion, and sometimes people have, because we haven't been in the home before, they haven't allowed an inspector to be in, they may have, just linoleum countertops, but we have them as a high-grade kitchen, we think they might have marble, and those changes would get made that way. So because he did the original inspection, it's not always an inspection of a walkthrough of a home. Sometimes it's, you're going on cost appreciation of when it was originally built, and there were inspectors in there and stuff like that, so. And we do find, occasionally we'll find errors in square footage, or, maybe somebody ripped out or took down a barn in their yard, but they didn't pull a permit, so now we're still assessing them for it. They file an abatement, we go out, the barn's no longer there, and we can remove it, so stuff like that. When you file an abatement and you don't agree with your assessment, sometimes people think that they don't agree with the value we've placed on the house, but that is strictly fair market value, and that's done by sales analysis, and we're required by the Department of Revenue to be in a certain percentage either side of that fair market value. So it's not always just because you don't like the number, but there are occasionally errors that are found and fixed. The fires, tear downs, there are a bunch of different reasons.
Okay, so the people do have an option. It's not like the policeman that gave you the ticket is now the judge in front of you arguing the ticket, so you're gonna lose.
Correct, and a lot of people think that if they give us, because we do ask for comps when they, they'll say, my house is just like everybody else's in my neighborhood, but it's valued $100,000 higher. So we'll ask for comps, and then they get nervous because they think we're gonna, increase their neighbor. So it's nothing like that. It's not, that's not the way it is. We are focused on just their home and their application, and, that's what we're trying to fix. It's not about
Yeah.
anybody else at that point.
How people think and reality sometimes don't mesh, you know how it
Right,
works.
that's why I
Then they get
always
carried
offer,
away.
I always tell people that if you feel like there's an error, the application process is easy, it's painless, and it's non-judgmental, so the worst that can happen is that it gets denied, and there's always a reason, we let them know why, and then they can take it further. If they don't agree with us, they can take it to the appellate tax board, and go that extra step beyond outside of us and let a judge decide. But the majority of people, after explaining the process,
They're fine with it.
yes,
All right,
yeah,
cool, thanks.
you're welcome.
Great, thank you. Does anyone else have any questions? Good? All right, great. Thank you. Thank you, Joyce.
Thanks.
Thank you, guys.
All right, so, the next department on our agenda is the police and emergency management, but I think we had told the chief around 6 o'clock, so we can, if everyone's okay with it, we can kind of jump ahead to another agenda item until he arrives. Anyone object to that?
Don't waste time.
Okay, so we'll go to the next item on the agenda, which is just the approval of the minutes from, Ruth, correct me if I'm wrong,
11:20?
November 20th. Did everyone have a chance to read through those, which she had provided previously? Yes.
I make a motion that we accept the minutes.
I will second the motion. Then we need to take a vote. There are people who weren't there, though.
Yeah.
I'm not
Bill.
sure I was here.
Bill was absent, November 20th.
But everyone else was here, correct?
Correct.
All right, great. So, all in favor of accepting the minutes from November 20th with, so that's
And I
5
abstained.
and 1 abstention. Great, thank you. The next item on the agenda is A discussion on the annual town meeting finance board booklet. So every year, we put together a booklet for the annual town meeting, and Ruth had asked to add this to the agenda, just so that we could start discussing the content, and what we put in there, to make sure we are providing, information that is applicable, current, and, you know, what the taxpayers can, or voters can use to, make appropriate decisions when they're at the town meeting. I don't know, Ruth, if you wanna.
Just that also, you know, this is a booklet that we provide to the participants at the town meeting, people that sit in the audience, and we certainly have the opportunity to publish it digitally and print in advance. It's a really great way for us as a board to communicate to the residents, and I just think that it's a scramble every year because the budget is a scramble every year. And so we've always just kind of done what we could and found a way to just talk about the highlights and the urgencies of the budget. But I don't know, I think that the earlier we think about maybe a couple of other publications within it, that, you know, maybe we want to talk a little bit about the trash committee and the work that's being done there, or any other initiatives that are happening within the town, any other just helpful public outreach, or, you know, maybe some other comparative information that might be helpful. Nothing needs to be decided today, but I just don't think it's too early to start thinking about what information could be helpful and useful to the town.
No, I agree. I feel, you know, the book is, again, like you said, kind of put together.
In a panic.
In a panic to get something put together. But, you know, maybe we can take some time now, and I can distribute to everyone the book from last year, so everyone has what was in it, and everyone can kind of look through it, and then maybe, you know, come back with some ideas, suggestions of, you know, what you'd like to see, or even if you talk to, you know, your friends in town.
Yeah,
You know, what do they feel is missing from the book?
These are the ones at town meeting.
Yeah,
For the 100 people, we have to beg to come.
yeah.
But it's
Just
something that we
saying.
can also publish
But it is-
digitally to
Yeah, yeah.
accompany the warrant. The warrant is a thick document that you have to sift through, so this might highlight. I also think that a really big step that the town took with our support a couple years ago, 2 years ago, was to establish those, the financial policies. And I think that we've made some really good steps in that direction of achieving the policies. Maybe highlighting that as a really big, you know, undertaking of a framework of work that we've put together and supported, and that the town has really done great. I just feel like we've made, the budget's been tight, the budget's always tight, but I also feel like as a policy board, we've really made some great steps. And look where we were a few years ago when we had an interim manager, and now we have, I think, a really solid financial team with our town administrator, our town accountant, our treasurer. I think that our processes have really been tightened. I feel really good about where we've gotten, and I would like to somehow share that message. And I think that the residents should appreciate that message as well. And maybe that would come through with a statement of the policies or procedures or what have you. Any of that kind of thought. Maybe if the, you know, town administrator and accountant have thoughts on that too, we can even almost have a subcommittee group talking about what we could put together and summarize and publish, while still keeping it at a very high level, but it is an opportunity to reach out and communicate to the residents.
About the goals and the accomplishments that the town has made in the last several years. I think it's a noteworthy effort.
Yeah.
Some people just don't know, because they either choose not to be informed or because they don't know how to be informed. So, it's not a bad idea to let them, remind them of where we were and where we are and where we envision ourselves.
Yeah.
You know.
And that there's been some diligence and some real concerted efforts to get there. It's not just happening. It's not a passive kind of thing. It's not
It's
haphazard.
not by accident. There's actually thought, design, planning,
Yeah.
and a lot of hard work and skills and talent that goes along into making this cake every
Yeah.
year.
And it shouldn't be overshadowed by the fact that there's just never enough money and that the budget's tight and the budget's a panic and how are we going to pay for everything? It doesn't mean that, we don't have good processes, because we do.
No, I agree. It's,
Is last year's on the
Just
on
rigged
the
against
website?
us.
It should be in with the budget materials, but I can distribute it, or the link to everyone. If I'll download a PDF, but
Okay.
that way everyone can have access to it. All right,
And
you good with that?
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. The next item on the agenda, town administrator updates. Rebecca, I put a couple of things that are kind of some hot topic items for discussion, but I will turn it over to you.
Thank you. I think the biggest update right now we have is the summer program. As we had discussed, the summer program was not as successful as we had hoped it to be, and the direction it was going was not a positive one. So we had brought the idea forward as to the select board as what we could do to turn this around, and there was a lot of back and forth as to what options were available. So we were able to partner with the YMCA, and they have agreed to take over and put on a new summer program over at the Bagnell Elementary School for this summer. We are just finalizing the agreement with the select board's blessing. They had had a couple of additional terms that they wanted to agree upon, which is that Groveland residents would be top priority, and that we would have a small fee to use the facility in addition to the custodial fees for the cleanup each day. So the agreement is just finalizing those terms. Once they sign, we should be good to go. I received an email just today that stated that they were finalizing their QR code, their flyers, and their link that will be live, hopefully within the next week. And so we can start advertising that information to families, as everybody is very eager to make sure that they had their schedule set for the summer. So we are very excited. It was not an ideal situation with the way that the summer program had coming to an end for the town, but knowing that this is an opportunity that will provide that needed activity for families and childcare over the summer. It's a great partnership, and we're really looking forward to seeing the positive results, especially given the fact that it provides additional opportunity for the children in Groveland and beyond, not just using the Bagnell Elementary School. If there is a desire for a child to go to one of their other locations that has more outdoor activities such as archery and kayaking and things of that nature, they're able to bus from the Bagnell Elementary School to that site and then back. And there will be a before and after. And I did send them over the list of counselors from last year who will be invited back to participate this year as well, at a much higher rate as well. So I think they would be happy for that. So we're very excited, and more details will be finalized hopefully this week for release to the public next week.
Great idea.
Who pulled that off? Who pulled that off?
Great idea.
You?
It all kind of worked.
You?
It all kind of worked. It was very exciting, and we're very glad for those conversations and that collaboration, and, kind of just saying what you need and what you're looking for sometimes actually works out.
Every now and then, you need to take credit for what you do. I know there was a lot of pressure from certain people to try to make this happen, because there are a lot of people that have counted on it over the years and will continue to count on it. And I commend you for going way outside the box and thinking in ways that provide solutions as opposed to ways that provide obstructions.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm sure every parent out there that knows their child will have a safe and happy place this summer to go will thank you too as soon as they see you in the next Groveland Day.
Hey. Compliment.
Is the goal, you're still in the planning phase, but is there any shot that we break even this year on that one, or?
So we won't, so essentially, the ability for us to move forward with the YMCA is to keep the rent low.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we would trigger procurement thresholds, and it would cause a little bit of a more competitive process for the use of the school and a little delay in getting somebody into the space. So what we did is we based it off of what was offered with the Treetop program over at BZ. So for 1 year, the only income generated from it would be $8,000. So it wouldn't recoup the losses of what we had for the program and what we found ourselves in for this fiscal year. But that being said, the revenue will continue to come in and we could increase that. So say the program is successful and everything works out and it's going great, we can renew an agreement that would have a 5% increase on that price for a certain amount of time, obviously not to meet or exceed a certain threshold that would put us under procurement and have to have us, go out for bid and trying to figure out the use of the space in the school and what rights are relinquished and things of that nature. So there's not a potential there's a potential to increase it, but for this year, we kept it low to encourage them to partner with us and to make sure that it was about providing the program, as you said, for the families and not necessarily making a profit, because prior, we weren't making a profit. Prior, we were just putting in the revolving fund.
Right.
But recognizing the situation, we did want to try and recoup some of that money, so it was a slower approach to do so.
I see, sure.
You want to build up the momentum that we had before too, so that the program continues to grow and the revenues continue to flow. Now, will there be a discount offered to the Groveland residents?
There won't be a discount, but they won't turn anyone away. So if anybody has any financial difficulties, they are offering scholarships and other financial assistance. And the price of the program is cheaper than it was when we had the program. So it is competitive. And again, increasing that rent would have made it so that they would have had to increase their fees as well. So that was another deterrent from doing so. But they won't turn any Groveland resident away. And again, there is financial assistance available for anyone who needs it.
Great.
That's amazing.
And the other update would be the trash and recycling? Or is
Yeah,
that a separate?
It's a hot topic item, so I didn't know what.
I just wanted to make sure.
I think what Adam is on that.
Bill is
Bill
on
is
the
on
board.
that board. So I didn't know if you guys had any updates.
So the last meeting, I know you weren't there, it
Yeah.
was more of a discussion on the survey results. The last time we checked, honestly, I hadn't checked since that meeting, was about 620 responses, which is fantastic. I think when we did the master plan or any plan or any survey we've ever done, we get a max of maybe 50 people. So the fact that we actually got 620 residents to respond was quite amazing. The survey was really telling. There was a lot of people who were concerned with the size being proposed, but there's also a lot of people who are willing to have a discussion. So we did have a meeting this past Thursday to discuss those results, and there were a couple of members from the public present. So the next steps from the board or the committee will be to, I guess they want to do something similar to Boxford, where they would assemble the survey data that they've collected in more of a narrative type format with charts and present that to the select board. At the same time, they would like to take a look at their recommendation and to see whether or not they would consider changing their recommendation based upon the results of the survey. So they haven't made that decision yet, but at their next meeting, that's what they'll be talking about, and cleaning up the data and getting a true understanding of what was put forward, because a lot of the data too, like, there was open text boxes, as I'm sure some of you who took it, like, so if you had like a family of 5, you put 5, and some people, and plus a dog, or plus a, you know, so going through that actual data and being like, okay, there's only 5 family members, or there's only 4, instead of, you know, someone who said, oh, and then a relative that visits, like, so all those little, you know, outliers made the data a little bit harder to sort, so we're just cleaning that up as well. So at their next meeting, I believe will be in February, the beginning of February, they will be conducting that, and then they will be making a recommendation and a presentation to the select board. But I don't know if there was anything else that had happened.
The only thing I can take out of that is, you know, it's a strange commentary in society that we get 50 participants for a master plan survey, but when you talk about garbage, they can't wait to get there.
When does the current contract expire?
So the current contract expires, not fiscal year '26, but fiscal year '27. So Waste Management had given us a potential opportunity to open up the contract that we're currently in for fiscal year '26 to move towards automated, which put this conversation on a fast track, because we would need to figure out whether or not we would be able to purchase the carts for the residents, obviously. So we were talking originally about the savings that would be capitalized from moving to automated, because remember, we have the hauling cost, and then we have the tipping fee. The tipping fee wouldn't change, but the hauling cost would go down because their overhead had decreased. So the savings that was essentially already committed per the contract signed could go towards the purchase of carts with an additional free cash allocation for the trash or recycling carts, however you presented it. But it wouldn't be a full price for free cash. It could be offset by the monies that were already allocated towards the contract. I'm not sure if that's really going to move forward, because the decision on the cart sizes hasn't taken place. One of the recommendations that I would like to make to the select board is to consider the fact that if the cart size has been kind of established on the recycling end, is that we try and move forward with the purchase of the carts for recycling and roll out recycling first. And then that allows the trash and recycling committee, as well as the select board, to take their time and figure out what they would like to do next. Again, the money's already been allocated, well, for fiscal year '26, so if we don't want to capitalize on the automated right now, we still have the next, you know, year and a half to go through and figure out how we would like to go out to bid, what we would like the hauler to provide, how we would like to go about it, and whether or not we want a 35-gallon or a 64-gallon for the trash, and that conversation can still happen. But if it's pretty set that everybody really wants that 96-gallon because of cardboard and the level of recycling and to promote recycling, we could potentially move forward with that now. So that's kind of a conversation I'd like the select board to have at their next meeting, because as we discuss budgets and go into, you know, allocations of our reserves, we need to know that, and I can get that information. And I have had conversations with vendors, and vendors are actually willing to do finance options as well. So we could potentially only allocate a certain amount of free cash for the first year to get it rolling out, and then if we wanted to, we could make a larger payoff earlier and pay that off, or we could continue to add that to the budget to support the financing of the totes. So it is something that we could consider from a financial perspective as well. If we're not ready to make that decision on trash, are we ready to make that decision on recycling? Because the small 18-gallon blue bins that everyone has adamantly said that is not appropriate. They're, you know, the wind's blowing them around, it's not sufficient. I have like 10 of them, you know, this is just not working. So if that's been decided, if that's the consensus, maybe we start to move forward with that.
And there's also, correct me if I'm wrong, depending on how the town chooses, grants that are available to subsidize some of these costs as well.
Correct.
That depends on how we choose.
So when would this be presented to the select board?
So the survey results and the recommendation or reconsideration of the trash and recycling committee won't be until February. But on their next agenda, being the select board, there was a request from 2 select board members to put the trash and recycling conversation on the agenda for discussion. So that's when I was going to bring up the recycling issue, if the chair so chose to put it on the agenda. And that will be on Tuesday.
If you separate the trash and recycling and buy the carts at different times, does that change the grant ability?
No, because we tried to do excuse me, a Massachusetts, not a Massachusetts, it's like a recycling partnership grant, and we were denied because Groveland actually recycles too much. So they would not.
That's a thing?
I know. So I was equally as shocked.
See what we're
So-
dealing with here?
Because our recycling numbers were so high, they would not give us any financial assistance with the purchase of the carts. For the Mass DEP grant, that's separate. So they're talking about a Mass DEP grant that's like $66,000 for the purchase of the trash carts if they were to move forward with the 35-gallon. If they don't move forward with the 35-gallon and trying to implement a pay-as-you-throw, they will not get the grant from Mass DEP for about 66 to cover the cost of the totes. So while there might be other grant opportunities to help us with totes and recycling totes, the ones that we did try and get were not successful, and the trash is kind of separate and tied to tonnage and pay-as-you-throw and that conversation.
And the DEP grant for the totes is 66,000, that covers the whole cost of it?
No, it only covers a certain portion. I believe that the quote that we got for the number of households was, the last time I checked with the assessing manager for units, because remember, if you're a duplex, it's not just parcel count, was about 2,221. So use that based on the unit price for, I think a 64 was about 121. So.
I
it
think
would
we
cover
figured
a
out
portion.
$280 to $300,000. Total cost to purchase them all.
What was it, the total cost of,
Total cost to purchase all the totes if we had purchased them.
was under $300,000, yes.
Right, yeah.
Yes. And even if we did go with like a 96, which is more expensive, but the difference is like $5 to $10 between the unit prices, between the 35, the 64, and the 96, or 95, excuse me.
Yeah, basically, they're giving us 30
Yeah.
cents on the dollar.
Yeah, it looks like we'll still be on the hook for 200,000.
Easy.
But that, again, is only if you pick the little trash barrel.
Exactly.
That's not much bigger than your kitchen.
Mass DEP
trash barrel.
will not.
I filled out the survey, they know how I feel.
So it's still an ongoing conversation. It's a little confusing because there's multi-conversations going on at once. So I do hesitate to bring in the recycling conversation, but I would just hate for the town to lose out on an opportunity to start the process. If we're just getting so caught up in the weeds and the trash side of things, like,
Especially if we can divert from the trash to the recycle, because then our tonnage goes down, our costs go down. So I think it's vitally important we take that first step now. I mean, it's a huge cost savings. Automation is another huge cost savings because the labor involved, and the driver doesn't have to get out of the truck now, he just pulls that lever. Again, it's just,
And they all have to be the same make and manufacturer for the totes?
so they don't have to be, but we would obviously kind of want them to be because they
Yep.
have like the
bar.
barcode and you can scan them
Oh,
so you
okay.
know where they
Yeah, so they're
are.
different
So
than
if
what
somebody
I've
tries to
seen.
take
Yeah.
it when they leave, we're able to
Yep.
say, no, it stays with the household.
Sure.
And it's just nicer to have that uniformity and the way that it looks around the road when
Yeah,
you drive.
yeah, yeah,
by.
absolutely. And one last thing, it's just like, what do people do with the old carts? There's gonna be a lot of,
So there's conversation that what we can do with the hauler is that we could have them take them. So if you wanted to keep it in your garage for your own purposes, you could have that, but on rollout, you could potentially put out the cart and they'll drop off a cart and take the other cart. There is an added expense, and what they do is they try and use it and recycle it so that it can be used for other purposes. So they do try and do it in a sustainable manner. But because of that, there is that added cost.
Yep.
So that's something that we could definitely do, and I know that they've done it in other communities. I live in the city of Amesbury, and that's what, Mello did when they rolled out the cart with their vendors, that they allowed you to put your trash in recycling. If you didn't want to keep it out on the thing, they dropped you off a new one, and they took that one.
yeah, it's hard to get rid of those barrels. You have to cut them up and.
So it is an ongoing conversation. No real decisions have been made, so I would suggest, obviously following the conversation if you can. Any updates that I have that are more substantial in nature, any decision-making that occurs, I can share with the finance board, obviously, for the financial implication of the contract as well as the purchase of the totes.
Great, thank you so much.
It still sounds like great progress, even without final decisions being made. It's great progress, and I really appreciate everybody on that committee taking on such a potentially contentious. I just think it's just been such a large portion of our budget that has been increasing so much. It really need to be taken under.
The surrounding communities already have fixed barrels.
Everybody's done it.
Everybody's, we're about the only ones left.
We're the only ones for years, Jim, that had no limit on the amount of trash.
Yeah, it's a
you could
bit of a
throw out.
free-for-all.
You
We
could
have
throw
a
out.
limit now, but it's not adhered to.
Right.
Well, yeah, that's
So
the
it's great to
problem.
get
Laws that aren't
this
enforceable.
cost under
It may
control.
be contentious, but,
As the MBTA just
But
found out.
necessary,
but necessary.
100%. Which is why I completely support it.
All right, great. Thank you, Rebecca. Nothing else, right?
No.
Okay, perfect. Hi, Chief. I'm good. How are you? Thank you for joining us tonight.
Welcome to the Inquisition.
Yeah, absolutely. The floor is all yours. You guys, you can just go through, walk us through the department, any significant changes, anything that affects your request this year.
Yeah, there are a couple significant increases, and as usual, it's the contractual obligations. Probably the biggest you see is-
Chief, your mic's off.
How's that? That work?
Yeah,
Get you now.
Perfect, thanks.
You're welcome. In the wages, there's a couple officers that are going to that next step, so that's an increase in that line. And then the other significant increase is I'm asking for an additional officer. Something I asked for a few years ago. I knew I needed 3, and just trying to be respectful to the process and whatever money was available. The town was very supportive. I got 2. And now I'm here asking for that 3rd officer. And what that would do is complete around the shift coverage that I need. Since post, we've lost most of our part-time officers. I do have a handful of part-time officers, but they all have full-time jobs. It's not like the old days when it was folks trying to get into the profession and they were committed to work and whatever they could work to get into the police work. Now, it's like a couple of them are full-time firefighters, and they all have full-time jobs, every one of them, and there's only 5 that can really work for us. So like this week, I have a couple open shifts, and it looks like it's going to overtime, which is always something I've tried to prevent, but without the coverage, we're doing that. So with this 3rd officer, that would not only address the growth in the town and the call volume that we're seeing, but it would address that lack of part-time officers, and importantly, allow the officers their time off. With the post-training requirements, there's more training, so officers are out of the cruiser more. And then, that's probably the most significant time off, but then, of course, their vacation time, personal time, court time, sick time. There's always something every week that I have open shifts that is a problem to fill. And then with people coming and going, the policing has changed drastically across probably the country, but just say with the Commonwealth, it's like we're a football team. We're just trading and trying to get draft picks. I've never seen it like this. Right now, I have 4 full-time personnel that are being looked at. There's backgrounds being done on them right now for larger communities around us. And I know a couple of them are dispatchers. They want to be police, so that's kind of a no-brainer if they have that opportunity. But every one of them says they want to stay in Groveland, and they're struggling with it. So, but when they get different opportunities that we can't provide, we may lose them. So it's a continuous battle lately with just personnel. One of the other increases that you saw was that NIMLIC. That's an area response that's been in place for years, and I've always held off on it, somewhat because of the expense. But now I'm finding that we're kind of on our own island. Even West Newbury's either joined it or they're looking at it. Another town that wasn't in it's Topsfield, but pretty much this whole area is covered with this group. And that's a huge benefit asset to the community, that if we do have those significant events, they'll come out. Historically, I've relied on the state police, which they're wonderful, or they come in and then they just leave. And we did have an incident where we couldn't get enough help when we have an incident. One was like with a shot fired in a house and the guy was barricaded. we really need a lot of resources for that, and this would bring that to Groveland. And also with all the school events, they have a STARS program, which goes in and deals with not just the tactical approach, but the emotional and dealing with the reunifications and things that take place before and after an incident like that there's training. And so I feel like we're at that point where I think it would behoove us to be a part of that and give Groveland all the resources they would need in the event of a significant event, or even they'll come out if you have a lost Alzheimer's patient or a lost child. You're going to have help here that will be kind of overwhelming in some cases, where they'll just come in and just want to help and be there for us. So, and then I think everybody's seeing just the increase in everything, dues for some of the associations, some of the expenses. I certainly tried to maintain that level funding where I could. And as usual, I just work hard to be responsible with the money, and if I don't need it, I always give it back. And I think I've got a pretty good track record of returning money that I was able to save. And it doesn't come easy. I'm pretty tight with the money as much as I can be, so.
How many full-timers? Is it 5?
Counting me, there's 13.
13?
Yeah.
Okay.
This would give that full complement of officers. If an officer needed time off, I wouldn't be filling the overtime.
Yeah.
The other thing is the detective work is increasing drastically, as well as some of the other calls, but a lot of our, like, Bitcoin scams or elderly scams, the detectives we have are just doing incredible work. They're really tracking down a lot of the bad guys, but it takes a lot of time. And those detectives kind of wear those two hats. They're the ones that are in the cruiser. So they're off the street for a significant amount of time, could be for days, any type of investigation. So this would allow the detectives also to concentrate and not be running out to an alarm call or a crash or something else like that. Bless you.
So you're looking to add one full-time, which would bring you up to 14 in total with yourself?
Yes.
And then right now you said you have five part-time.
Yeah, I think, I counted, there's 6, but he doesn't really work the cruiser, it's just more for details. So I
Okay.
have 5. And again, there's good weeks and bad weeks, especially with a firefighter schedule.
Yep.
You might not see them for that 5
A period of
time, and then
time.
all of a sudden they're available. And again, this was a good example this week. We have a dispatch and a cruiser shift that I'm having trouble filling. And I do have to note that the dispatchers and officers have been really great as far as filling in and moving around, but I've been kind of pushing it that this is temporary. We're gonna stop moving you around, because contractually, they are allowed to work their shift and should be able to stay and know where they're working each week. But they've just been so helpful stepping up. If I say, hey, we just did it today, we had somebody get them off that midnight to work the 3 to 11. And they're like, they just had to change their daycare issues, and they came in. But it is wearing on them, and I know that they would like to see that stopped, and I do support that. It's just, I don't want to take advantage of them. But I've been saying that we're trying to get the personnel, we're trying to get the people. And this one more officer, that would be it for a long time. I don't see Groveland needing any additional personnel for years to come, because we would just have all the shifts covered as needed. I did take some money from the reserve officer line and transferred that, if you will, to the request for the full-time officer to try to offset the expense. And I work really well with Rebecca and Ellen, and they will help me crunch those numbers if we have to, like, even, let's tighten it up even more there. I was just a little concerned about how much do I give, and then now I've cut the reserve officer line so short that won't really benefit us to have reserves if I can't pay them.
Pay them, right.
But again, I would be willing to work if this worked out, to do whatever to make the numbers come together.
Does anyone have any questions?
The part-time officers that you have now, that's on-call as needed?
Yes.
And they show up when you call them? Or is it a decision they make that day?
Yeah, they make it that day. Actually, I mean, it used to be when you had reserve officers that wanted to be full-time, or this is their career.
Yeah.
Back when I started, they basically would strong-arm you, you know, like, you either work or you're not getting reappointed.
Okay.
And things have changed. I walk out of that station probably every day, and I look at whoever's working and say, thank you for coming in today. That's how it's changed. And I am thankful for the dedication of the people, but that's a good example of how things have changed, that we're now thanking people for coming in, where before, like, oh, you want to work here? And, you know, you'd be training for nothing, and you'd work whatever they said, and, you know, you got nothing extra, you know, and that's just the way it was, but it's a different world right now.
He's afraid of the legend of Wally Pipp, I guess, huh?
Who's that?
Wally Pipp, he was the guy that got sick and got replaced by a guy named Lou Gehrig.
Oh, okay.
Didn't work out well. Yeah, I have to support the new officer. I mean, anybody that's gone around town lately has to notice the increase in traffic, the increase in activity. It's not just the main roads, but now because of apps like Waze and things like that, if the main roads are a little clogged, everybody knows all the back roads.
Yeah.
And, you know, some of these back roads, it's like the Indianapolis 500. There's very little monitoring because you just don't have the resources, and it's just, you just fly around.
Yeah. Well, there was a time you didn't see really any commuter traffic, if you will, on the back roads, and that's my road, 7 Star. And it's just, there's a line of traffic even in the morning now or at afternoon, and I think it is because of the lights, and everybody's doing it. But to make it worth your while to go the back roads, instead of going 97, you have to go faster, I think. And that's what you're seeing, is people are like just trying to get around it all.
Yeah, and with, you know, the apps and things on your phone, they tell you how to get around this stuff. And,
Yeah.
you know, if nobody's monitoring and you know you can do 45 on a 25.
Oh, they monitor that. Don't you dare worry.
We need more monitoring.
They're there.
Get a speed camera, that's an automatic revenue generator. Right?
The license plate detector.
Yeah.
Got hit by that twice in Rhode Island last week.
Yeah,
20.
Rhode Island is
Impossible.
notorious for the speed cameras.
Yeah.
Just for, so you said you had a couple officers maybe looking around. Is that just, do you think it's driven by pay discrepancies primarily, or is it also the working environment, trying to get people on shift, a
So
little
the-
chaos
A
there?
couple were, like you said, they're dispatchers.
Yeah, that makes sense.
For them, and they want to be here, we just don't have the opening.
Sure,
for them. So
sure.
I understand, I support them. And then the 2 officers, it's local cities nearby.
Yep.
And one of the things they talked about, like the education incentive, that was the reason for it. I don't know if they're really going to go. I mean, I think they would have they're going to want them to go. But as far as the officer wanting to go themselves, I know they're struggling with it. It's just, this is a nice place to work. Let's, you know, I mean, Groveland's
Yeah.
beautiful. It's just, for whatever you do here, this is a nice community. And if you start going to some of the, I don't want to pick on any cities, but they're like that way. They're just, I'm like, watch what you wish for, you know?
Yep.
You know, in this town, there's people that ask for officers by name. You know, they get to know them, and they want that officer. They can really make a difference. And that's huge in policing, that you can make a difference. Not that you can't in a city. Again, I'm not knocking the city. They have a lot of opportunities there, but there's just so many officers here. It's, you know your local officers after a while.
All right.
You know?
Thanks.
And I think the dispatcher, a lot of them, their natural progression is to then move into an officer role. That's how my brothers both started, and, you know, they go from dispatch to officer, and, you know, one of them's now a deputy chief, and, you know, they want to stay local. My brothers are both in my hometown. So they might progress, but then they come back if there's that
Yeah.
an opening, so.
And we have a core group of officers that have been here for quite a long time. Not as long as me, of course, but that's a little unusual. and they won't leave, I don't see, you know, the core group, but these are, the generation's different now. Like, when you got into this job, you would see the light at the end of the tunnel and you'd stick it out. And now I've had a couple officers since I've been the chief that just went on and did something else. They just wanted to try a different career. And again, some of it might be money. You know, one was, he was actually a sergeant, had a family, and he just said he's gonna go do cybercrime. He's gonna do contracting work for the government. That's Monday through Friday, huge raise. And another one just went to Georgia to do the EMD work, emergency management work, and that was another huge raise. So there's a lot of opportunities for people that weren't there before, because it just seems like there's more openings, or maybe some people don't want to do it anymore, like.
There's more criminals.
Yeah, and it used to be like more of a waiting list, you know, the civil service lists aren't what they used to be, and so it's different. So having Groveland be so attractive just because of the community is helping us, but I can't keep up with some of the other, you know, competition that's out there. But it's a good group of people, and it's going really well, so.
And then just to add, for a contractual standpoint, the dispatcher union, they just negotiated their contract last year. The police union is up for negotiation, and we're in negotiations currently, or about to be in negotiations currently. And the chief's contract does expire next fiscal year as well.
Now, would you be looking to promote an officer from within, one of the dispatchers?
Yes. You know, I've wanted to do that. And when we have, at times, if it matters the need, or and if I have the money, because we have to pay to send them to the academy now. But it's beneficial if you have a good candidate in-house that you know, to invest in them. And I do have them sign an agreement that they leave within a period of time that they're gonna have to reimburse us. There's always I don't know, I have a concern sometimes when you hire strangers, you don't really get to know them for a year.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a hard job to find out that they failed, because it's usually at the expense of one of our citizens or something. So if we can hire from within, I try to do that, and I haven't made any promises, but when I hire these dispatchers that really want to be police officers, I tell them, you would be considered if I can make it happen for a police officer's job. So I've done it and not done it. It's just a matter of, you know, like we had that sergeant I mentioned left, so I just had to fill that job. I needed help, so I got somebody trained. We were lucky to find somebody that was already trained.
So is there, like, the fire chief got a grant for 2 full-time employees? Is there such one for the police?
Yes, and we just tried last year, and we didn't make the cut.
They didn't make it.
No. Was it Rebecca Kopp's grant, I believe?
Yes.
Yeah, so we did try. You know, a lot of those grants are for bigger places that have bigger problems, you know, I think. Not that we couldn't get a grant, but, you know, it's, I don't know. I don't know why we didn't make the cut, but we did try, and Rebecca supported that.
Okay.
Probably too efficient in what you do.
Right.
Chief Gillen doesn't need the money.
Yeah.
Look at this.
You would,
So just out of curiosity, how much does it cost roughly to go to the police academy?
It's like just over 3,000 now.
3,000?
And then when you think of the gear and everything else, that could be up to a couple thousand.
Sure.
You have to buy, so. And I think that's awful, that the Commonwealth makes us pay. You know, the communities have to pay to
Right.
train your officers. I don't know why that's not covered, but
Right.
yeah, so we have to pay.
you had mentioned an increase in call volume. Can you expand on that a little bit?
The numbers, or like the type of call?
Numbers, type of calls, just,
I don't have a percentage, but in my report, I listed them to show the numbers.
okay.
A lot of the calls too, and the fire chief can attest to this too, it's the medical calls, which we go to as first responders. With his day folks on, it's a really good team that we have going, because they're there really quick. But lots of other times we're there first, just because we're out on the street. So the calls that we've been going to just for medicals has increased drastically. A lot of the, like I mentioned, the detectives are working harder on the, just the scams are, I don't think people would believe it, you know, what's going on with, even in Groveland. So that just takes a lot of work. A lot of the other calls, like house breaks, domestics, that hasn't really changed much. We've been doing pretty well with that. So it's more just in general, and some of the traffic issues has increased.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay,
Anyone else have a question?
all set.
I have one last thing, everybody's done. You said some of the officers are looking to maybe move on.
Yeah.
Could you name them publicly so we can administer some heavy peer pressure on them? Has it been?
They might not, so I don't want to sign any rumors. It is a fact that there's 4, and 2 are dispatchers, 2 are officers.
Any thought of locking these people up for a while until, goes away?
We'll
No?
see.
Okay.
I mean, like I said, I feel bad for them because they struggle, you know, they're happy here, but there are some opportunities in a bigger city, you know, that you don't have in Groveland. But I've been here basically my whole career, and I could brag about it all day long, the benefits of being in a small town and small-town policing, the community policing, and again, the difference you can make. And so,
It's huge. I know more than a few of them personally, and they're not only outstanding officers, they're outstanding individuals as people. You can see how they interact with the community. It's a personal level, not an authoritative level.
Yes.
They really mingle well, and the community loves them. But on a serious note, I'm glad that the DARE program that you and I started years ago still continues to go strong. Hopefully, it continues to pay dividends to keep these children educated on the dangers of drug and alcohol abuse, and
yeah,
as
thank
well
you
as
for bringing that up. That's one of my proudest moments there that I've done as the chief. Sergeant Sindoni just started 2 weeks ago, and I probably talked about this last year. I try to brag about it, and thank you for letting me, right?
listening to it.
It's up to 12-week program, went from 10 to 12, and the sergeant comes back with a smile on his face. He says, "I love this class," you know, and it's just, it's really well-received. And I keep Sergeant Sindoni fully certified as an SRO, so he's able to go in and apply his knowledge, and lots of times you need somebody that is certified to deal with some of the school issues with the kids today. So that program's underway again, and again, I've been able to fund that all within my budget. I'm looking for a little money, hopefully some help, maybe even outside. I shouldn't say we, the sergeant did a car wash to raise money just for the shirts, you know, so it's, and when the sergeant is at the class, I mean, doing the class, we just try to do, like, I got ready to go out, and the lieutenant did, and we said, we just didn't have the people or the money sometimes, so we just make it work, because I just believe in that program, and that's been really well-received.
Yeah, no, I remember chasing you down the hall and tackling
Yeah,
you,
Yes,
and
I listened to
begging
you,
you and pleading with you
Yeah.
to bring this
I
back.
did, and I remember that, and it
great.
was something in my sights, so again, together we did that, and I appreciate that.
I'm glad it's a success.
Yeah, it really is, it's really good. And we're the only ones in the area that I know of that's doing it, so.
My youngest just started it, and he came home talking about it. so
Oh, good.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, so that's good news. And our clinician's doing great. We're still making a difference in people's lives. Every week, there's something she's working. She was over there today, you know, so we're trying to get a second clinician through grants. I don't know if that's gonna happen, but that whole program is really trying to push some of the responsibility and money back towards the town, but they haven't hit us up for any money except for some of the training, that they're not gonna keep paying for the training, so I'm trying to figure that out, just to maintain those certifications. And it's the mental health awareness that they want us trained, and everybody over there's certified. I just learned today, the state 911 is now requiring the dispatchers to be mental health certified as a trainer, so that was a surprise today, that's a couple hours that they all have to go to a class. And but it's so important, because that's such a big problem today, that we do support it, and that's going really well, too, so,
Awesome. Thank you for your years of service. We appreciate it.
thank you.
You're not going for
Next,
We can lock him up too, Chief Valentine. Don't think you can't do it.
and we're working extremely well. Speaking of my friend in the back there, the fire department and the police have come together and worked like I've never seen before. That the fire chief, Chief Valentine's actually, like, when the Jaws came, he trained our officers on the Jaws, which is unprecedented. It's like, who would think of that? But he's right, when you're in a small town and you have limited resources, and the chief can tell you, the officers will get in there, they'll crawl around the cars, they'll, you know, we went to a woods fire up off of Mulberry, and, you know, it's just limited people, and I'm out there with just helping them pull a hose or whatever. So we're working together like, you know, never before, and like the chief said, you know, there could be a bad incident, if those officers can help with the Jaws even, if they're willing, and they are. So it's, that's going really well too. And, at the end of the day, we're here to serve the community, and now we have finally got to a point where we focus on that more than anything else, and it's going really well, so. Thank you, Chief Valentine, again.
So you
And
wanna-
thank you for reminding me about this meeting tonight.
You're looking for a cellmate is what you're looking for. I get it. We can arrange it.
So,
All right, great. Thank you so much. Everyone's all set?
Yeah, thanks.
okay.
All right, great.
Thank
I
you so
appreciate
much.
everybody's support and time and all that you guys do too, so thank you.
Takes a village, Chief. It takes a
Yeah.
village.
And I did try to log into meet with you folks after the fact.
From one chief to the next.
Last but certainly far from the least.
The town administrator is also trained with those jobs, by the way.
All right, great.
How are you?
Thank you. We're good. I think everyone's good. Thank you for joining us. We've been through this a few times now together, so I will turn it over to you to walk through your budget and
Okay.
discuss.
Couple of new faces that don't know me. I'm Bob Valentine, the fire chief. My budget has only increased a small amount. Salaries, my contractual salary would be decided after I sign my contract. Rebecca and I are currently negotiating. Firefighters' wages went up to 2%. I have two new career firefighters. They're young, one's 22, the other one's 26. They're incredible young men. They work extremely hard. They're learning the job. I'm very pleased with their progress. To keep the call firefighters involved heavily due to call increases, it's very difficult nowadays to keep the call firefighters trained, involved. My first year here, we did recruitment and had half a dozen to 10 apply. This year, we did a small recruitment, and I got 2 to apply. Huge difference. It's becoming more and more difficult to get the people of Groveland and the immediate surrounding area to join as call firefighters, especially when they find out what the training and the time that they need to put into it takes them away from their family a lot longer than it used to. But we've started a per diem coverage on the weekends and covering vacations. That, I increased that line item by moving some from the call salaries and a small increase. The drill wages, I dropped a couple of $1,000s and moved that into the per diem to cover weekends and holidays. Everything else, other than fuel this year, I've tried to level fund, which is becoming more and more difficult. The expenses for maintaining these trucks is becoming ridiculous. Looking at tires on engine 1 right now, it takes 6 tires and they're almost $1,000 a piece, and they're not even installed yet. So the prices are going up on everything. I just had to have the rear air struts put on Squad 1, and that's over $1,100. I just don't understand how parts prices are increasing so much. But this year I am level funding the maintenance and the inspections. I'm working extremely hard, making sure I find the best price. The near future, I'm not asking for any increase in career personnel, but the near future, I've had this conversation with Rebecca a few times. We're gonna have to seriously look at how we can get something done. The call volume is increasing. I'm sure the police chief said the same thing. We went up another 12% on call volume this year. And with the new law of the accessory dwelling units that are gonna be thrown in every town and city in Massachusetts, that's gonna bring in little to no revenue, is gonna increase public safety and trash and highway and everybody else's needs. They're gonna be asking for more and more. The ADUs, as they're referred to, are gonna add more people, but they're only gonna be like 900 square feet. So the revenue coming in is not gonna be much more. It's like putting an addition to another room on your house. Sewell Street will bring in revenue in the near future, but as you all know, those buildings are starting to go up, and that's gonna bring huge demand on police and fire. So the near future, 3-4 years down the road, we're gonna have to look at more career firefighters, unfortunately. I'm doing the best I can to make sure we're keeping the call firefighters. I'm trying to break them up into teams. Right now, I have 4 teams, so it's 1 week a month that I ask them to make themselves more available. The rest of the month, make themselves available. Command staff has really stepped up. Deputy Chiefs Briscoe and York and Captain Merrill and I share the load. We take turns every week, although I tend to come out more often than any of them. But I started doing this when I was 16. I'll be 61 in a couple of months, and when they make me leave when I'm 65, it's gonna be kicking and screaming. I love this job, I always have. But we are gonna have to look at a few more career firefighters in the future. Like I said, I got the teams in the per diem working, trying to cut the expectations of them, but the demand is getting large. Unfortunately, that's the biggest expense that we're gonna be looking at in the future is the staffing. The maintenance in that, we can figure out, but the staffing's gonna become the biggest thorn on our sides. Anybody have any questions?
When you say the call volume's gone up 12%, do you have, not specifics, but is it more, like the chief was saying, there's more of a mental health situation versus like a physical
Well,
injury or type event or versus?
yes. Last year, we did 852 calls in the fiscal year. This fiscal year, we did 929. Fires went up by 5 or 6 calls, not percent. I don't know if it's people are a little more reckless or they're just nonchalant about things, but it seems that accidental things happen more and more. More people are not staying in their kitchen when they're cooking, and all of a sudden, all their fire alarms are going off, and we have to go ventilate the house. Motor vehicle accidents increased a few. As to your point, traffic is getting worse in the town. We got the 2 lights. You would think that would slow people down, but I'm watching some of these intersections, and they're speeding up because they're trying to beat the yellow and the red instead of slowing down. Public service has increased. Public service has become a little more Rebecca complains about this all the time. She'll be listening to the radio that's in her office, and she'll hear a lift assist, a lift assist, and a lift assist. So that can be, but we can't ignore them, because these lift assists are true emergencies to these people.
Right.
They've fallen, and they can't get up, and there's nobody in the house that can help them get up. It's a true emergency, so they call us. And we can't say, no, we have to go and help them out, make sure they're not injured. And medical emergencies and mental health issues are increasing extremely. I mean, 60 to 70% of our calls are medical and mental health.
I think the call volume was up last year as well. I have it in my notes from my other notebook, but do you remember roughly?
Every year, we've
10%.
increased 8 to 12%
Okay,
easily.
gotcha.
Actually, the worst year was 2020 during COVID, and believe it or not, our medical calls during COVID dropped 12%. But those that didn't know how to cook, that constantly called for delivery, were cooking. So they were going into those calls instead of medical.
Sure,
But that was our biggest increase. That was a 15% increase in 2020.
sure.
This past year was a pretty good increase of almost 100 calls.
Right.
And we're already starting. I looked at the first half of this fiscal year, we're already over 500 calls.
Gotcha.
So it's
It's
continuous.
a lot, yeah, it's going up. Do you have, in terms of lithium ion fires, is there special training for that now? Do you have everything you need there? Okay,
Yes, there is. Depending on who you talk to, they tell you to send a lot of tankers and put a lot of water on them, or they tell you to stand there and watch it burn, make sure nothing else burns.
Right.
Because once those batteries go into that override, they're not stopping.
yeah,
They
right.
just keep cycling through, reheating. It's become a problem. Brockton actually found, it's a firefighter, he's probably gonna be a millionaire soon instead of a firefighter, but he came up with a way of trying to do it. It's the plug that's not really a plug, and it supposedly overrides the batteries, and it acts like it's charging, and then they've got a blanket, but the blanket's gonna be expensive, so there's another expense.
Yep,
But the blanket goes over the whole car and smothers the fire,
yep,
and you gotta leave the blanket on it, so when you're done with it, you gotta buy a new blanket.
yeah, sure, sure.
One-time use, huh?
Yeah, because once you take it off and the oxygen gets back to it, the heat's there, it's gonna reignite. So you leave the oxygen stove with the blanket, and it keeps the fire from reigniting, and you wait for the battery to stop going through that. It's extremely difficult.
Yep. Thanks.
And unfortunately, because of the batteries, car fires after an accident are becoming more prevalent because they're damaging the battery, and then it goes into that. Unlike the internal combustion vehicles, the gas would leak and you'd cool it down and you wouldn't have to worry about it catching on fire.
Right.
Or you'd just take it away.
Yeah, this stuff just moves from cell to cell, and oxygen doesn't matter, right?
Yep.
So, yeah.
Thank you for all of that information. Does anyone else have any questions?
Have there been any thought of ways to attract new, human resources is obviously your biggest concern right now and your biggest concern going forward.
Right.
Are there any ideas on how to, yeah, I know we've been talking about this for years, that the call firefighter is a dying trade.
It is, and unfortunately, it's not Groveland, it's countrywide. Gentleman come in to see me today, he's doing a study for the town of Boxford for the way they handle their medical calls. He's a consultant, he comes out of, just outside of Cincinnati, Ohio, and when I started talking about call firefighters and how we're having a tough time recruiting, he said, yeah, welcome to everybody else's world. they're having the same issues out in the Midwest, out in the West Coast. The call firefighters, they proved that up to about 500 calls a year, they're doing pretty good because, I mean, 52 weeks, that's 10 calls a week, it's not a big deal. Now you're starting to hit close to 1,000 calls a year. You're leaving your house and your family more often. And then, because fire doesn't care if you're a call firefighter or a career firefighter, you have to train the same number of hours. Where the career firefighters are doing it while they're on shift, we're doing it every Tuesday night, every couple of Saturdays during the summer. We just went over our training schedule last night, and this year we're gonna have to do 4 Saturdays with different training scenarios, because there's just not enough time on the Tuesday nights. And the expectations from the NFPA guidelines and OSHA are telling us that we have to be, and we're not the fire department anymore. We are an all emergency response team. We're expected to go and help the police with active shooter, hostile environments. I just purchased 10 ballistic vests and helmets and put them on the fire trucks. When I first started in the fire service, the last thing I thought I would be putting in a command car would be a ballistic vest and helmet. But we're carrying them now because of the way the world is. Mental health issues in this country are horrible, and I don't know when they're gonna slow down.
Now, when Dave Evans was here, actually when he was vice principal over at the high school, I'm sure you know he's very active in the fire department. He would try to recruit kids in the high school,
Through the
get them
junior
excited.
firefighting program. Unfortunately, now that he's chief over in Newbury and he has 0 time, I think that junior firefighting program's starting to fall apart a little bit, which is something I'd like to jump back into if we could possibly host it, but I'm gonna need people to volunteer their time to train these kids. That's how I started. I'm not gonna lie, the reason I'm in the fire services today was I was 16 years old, I hated school, and my buddy said, if we join the junior firefighting program, we don't have to go to school. Which was not true at all, because the fire chief told me after I joined, yes, when you get your report card, bring it to me, because if you're failing any subjects, you can't be part of this program. So I had to study harder than I was, because I fell in love with the job, so.
I think that's the idea, get the kids
If
hooked
we
early.
can hit the kids early, yes, and if we can hit Pentucket, I would have to check with Dave and see how he did it through the school and how he got things started, but yes, that's an avenue we could definitely look at, because I don't know what's going on in West Newbury with the junior program anymore.
Right, right. I know that he ran it for a while, so.
Yeah, he was trying to continue to run it after he took the job as chief over in Newbury, but he, like all the fire chiefs in Essex County, are kind of busy.
Has there been any thought about sharing the responsibility between the 3 fire chiefs? Because you only have one school.
Yeah, we could do that. See what we could do, if we can get people from each department to do some of the training. Like I said, we could ask them to volunteer their time. I would do it. I volunteer my time all the time. I come back for calls constantly. My OT is own time. So I'm sure a couple others would be willing. I reach out to Dave before the end of this week and talk to him about, something about that. Because like I said, the recruiting is getting difficult.
Right, right.
They find out they gotta go to level 1, level 2, they gotta get their EMT license, then they gotta constantly train every Tuesday night. They're like, when do we go home?
But for a lot of kids at that age, it's a great, it's another opportunity
Uh-huh.
besides college or the trades.
Yep.
Something they can get excited on and make a career of.
Worked for me,
Yeah, we just got to get them excited at that level.
correct.
So hopefully you guys can figure
No,
something
like I
out.
said, I
and
can
make it happen.
definitely reach out to Dave and find out who's trying to run it, because I haven't heard anything on it. I know they were meeting every Wednesday night for a while. I haven't heard anything on it in a while.
Everyone's good?
Yeah, my only other comment is thank you again for your
Oh, thank you for
many years of service
time.
to the community and residents of Groveland. I truly appreciate that and appreciate you.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
as well as all your team
Oh.
to keep us safe.
I got a great core of people that keep me in line, too. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Chief.
I like it,
I like the jacket.
Try to stay out of the hot sun.
All right, so that concludes the budget meetings for this evening, and we have managed to get through all of the other updates already. So the next item on the agenda is just to talk about the next meeting, which was scheduled for January 29th at 5 PM, and that will continue the budget meetings with various departments. And then the next item is just if anyone has any other items not anticipated prior to the time of posting. We'll just go down. There's nothing? No? Mark, I don't have anything. Ruth?
Not I.
Jim?
no, I'm all set.
All right, and so then the next thing is there a motion to adjourn?
I'm making a motion to adjourn.
At 6:47. I will second that motion. All in favor?
Aye,
Okay, unanimous. Thank you, everyone, for your time.
thank you.